you think?
I liked the framing of it as far as having the hypnosis on, kind of bookending the whole thing. I really liked the way that it was captured with my father as far as the candor of what he said and how it was all put together. I'd never really seen him so emotionally naked, except for during this process, and then seeing some of the stuff that I wasn't even in the room for just now during the documentary itself. And it's amazing to me to see this new side and to have it documented, and something that I'll always be grateful for. I think that there were a few moments that it really felt like just in all honesty, that the emotional impact could have been probably heightened a little bit for a viewing audience or whatever. It feels like it was almost a little clinical in spots. But I think for the most part it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, during the editing process, when you were making your decisions, I don't know, what types of choices you were making as far as like what it was that you were specifically looking for to try and put into the piece. But I know, from having been there during the time that you were shooting it, obviously, that there were some other moments that I felt really could have brought up that emotion a little bit more. And I don't know if that's something that you're looking at possibly including in the future for something else or anything like that. But I think that in order to really make sure that it connects with an audience, I think that that's something that might need to be brought up at some point.
Could you give me an example? Anything jumping out right away?
Not specifically, but there were just moments that I noticed when, especially during the interview with my father, it's a little more difficult for me because I didn't see the footage of myself or anything like that, so it's hard to kind of look at that from a distance and say, okay, well, this works and whatever. But as far as the stuff with my father, there were just moments that really kind of felt a little more emotional than what was actually included in the finished product. And I think that it's kind of hard to pinpoint one specific thing or anything like that. It's more, I'd probably have to just see the footage and as a refresher to remind myself, okay, this was something that I felt was really powerful, or a big revelation. But I also know that a lot of what my father said was very redundant, so it was probably very difficult to try and go through it and pick out those moments. So it's kind of difficult to say one side or the other as far as like I wasn't the one editing. I don't know exactly what it was that that you saw in the raw footage that made you make the choices that you made. Those might have been the best choices to make, but just looking at it from the fact that I can't distance myself completely from the project because obviously it's me and my dad.
Yeah.
But I think that it whatever choices were made in the process may have been the best choices, may not have been, but it just looking at it from my point of view, I feel like there were other moments that could have been put into it. I don't know.
Is that distance from it something that you wanted by excluding yourself intentionally from the editing process?
Yeah. A lot of times if you're too close to something, especially when it comes to what the nature of this documentary was, there was no way that I could have been objective. Well, trying to put this thing together. I could not have done that because I would have just looked at every piece and been like, well, I really want to make sure that my father sees that, but what about an audience? Would they really care? It would have been too hard for me to just say, and then it would have been a lot of wanting to try and keep things in that shouldn't be there,
Yeah.
that don't really tell the story.
Can you tell me what you think between those two different audiences, you and your father, and then a third audience, an extended audience, how you think this film is successful in those two different ways,
I think
not successful?
I think that probably even just adding an extra few minutes into it might have helped as far as maybe adding a little bit more of the hypnosis portion to kind of show a little bit more of that as far as how I was talking during that time, or a little bit more of my father talking about me, and there were things that I had said about my father that didn't seem to really be there at all. It was more it almost seemed kind of one-sided as far as the discussions of the father and son stuff. He was talking about his dad and he was talking about me, but there wasn't really much of me talking about him. So it I think that as far as a connection there, I think that felt like it needed to sort of be there in some way or another.
Yeah. So do you think as a document of like you as a character and your dad as a character, does this actually capture who you all are in some way?
I think it captures him.
Okay.
And it seems to me like after sort of inviting my father onto this project, that the project itself did sort of morph into something that was more about him, which is great, because this was something that he needed, and it was something that you were able to provide, which is fantastic. I feel like in order to really kind of frame his character, to hear some of the things that that I was saying about his behavior and everything else might have helped to kind of inform who he had been, and then show who he is now.
Got it. So, in considering moving forward with this, or not, I guess my first question for you would be, do you see this as a final piece, or are we going to continue? Does this need more edits?
I see this as a beginning.
Okay.
And I see this as something that definitely has more life in it, and I would love to see what could be done with more in the future. I think that there is definitely a lot of different directions to go, and I think that what you showed is great. I really like how it all came together. I just think, as far as being a filmmaker myself, as far as like writing and directing, I've never done anything in documentary style or anything like that, but when it comes to character and story, you kind of want to make sure that you understand the backstory. You want to understand who these people come, or where they came from. And, we get his youth, we get his, his recovery, but the in-between is not quite there. It's not filled in. And I think that was the biggest issue that I had with it. But overall, I still think that it was a strong piece. And I think visually it looks fantastic. And I was kind of surprised there were certain moments that I didn't even know. Like, I didn't know you had the camera set up where it was in the dining room when we were in there, with the mirror back there, and having that reflection of me over my dad's shoulder.
Yeah, that's one.
I really liked that shot.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know the camera was back there.
Yeah.
So And I think that, that the editing choices that you made when it came to, with the hypnosis and the way that you put that all together, I thought looked great. And, visually, I think that the movie really just, it captures that the nakedness of, of the emotion. But I think in some respects it just kind of doesn't quite hit with the emotional impact that it could.
So, in editing this,
Mm-hmm.
I was really, I think, juggling different audiences in considering the decisions I made at different points. And one way that I continued to look at this that made it actually more difficult for me than any other way was looking at this as a letter between you and your father, from you to your father and from your father to you. And so you've sort of responded on what is lacking, but and what is there from like what you got from your father and what you saw as far as his emotion, but trying to remember just a little bit from the day of the shoot. Can you remember any content that was presented that day that you feel like, if this is seen as a letter between you and your father, that you would want in there, something that wasn't said that should be in this specifically?
Probably, I would say something to do with the fact that there were those years that my father and I didn't speak at all due to, his addiction problems and everything else, or maybe even just something to help kind of talk about how we created well, I guess, he and I both were responsible for creating that distance between each other. I feel like if that was a little more prevalent in the cut, then I think that would actually help to ground it more and make it a little more emotional. I also feel like when editing something like this, it probably, you can't necessarily think about the subjects once you're done. You just kind of have to think about how to really tell the story. And so I think that it shouldn't matter one way or the other as far as whether or not this was a letter to me or a letter to my father. It should just be about how to tell the story properly.
And I guess my last question for you, besides any critiques that you might have further for me, is this something in its current form, before any other edits, that you would want your father to see?
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that he would really appreciate what was shown, and I mean, you can see the sadness on his face for the choices that he's made over the course of his life, and I think that he'll be really happy with how he was portrayed in it.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything that would make it seem as though he was anything but, I guess, regretful for what he had done. And that is truly the way that he does feel now. And I think that, seeing that on a screen and it really is a very powerful thing. Just seeing that sadness and that emotion coming through on him that I never saw before. I think it was a beautiful moment being able to see that. Not only live, but then also having something that that I can keep and see that my father really does regret a lot of the choices that he's made over the course of his life and wants to move forward and change who he is.
And how do you suggest we move forward with this project?
I would love to continue on in any way you see fit. When it comes to you know, adding more people in, you know, as far as telling their stories, father, you know, like the father and son stories, or whatever else you choose to do, I would be more than willing to continue on in any capacity you'd like to have me. I think there's a lot of talent in you, and I think that, you know, this shows it for sure. And you know, I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I would love to continue working with you however you want.
Great. Any more feedback on the film while we got it on camera?
I think that's about it. I can't really think of anything else at the moment.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm excited that you've seen it. That takes a
I am too.
huge load off of me. I was really, really on the edge about whether this was going to be a something that you were going to like or not.
Yeah.
I think I was definitely trying to sprinkle in some of that horror comedy that you and your father share between you all, which is something that I'm that's so foreign to me. So this is my first go at that, and there's a lot of fun actually. I think it sort of gave a little bit of room on either side to play with. So
yeah, I think you did a great job with it, and you know, I really look forward to seeing more of what you do in the future.
great. Awesome.
Well, thank
We're
you.
good. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And,
appreciate the opportunity.
yeah, me too. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason.
Jacob.
Jacob.
Thank you
Sorry.
guys. You have a great night.
See you soon.